Imagine being ordered to die for your country and saying no. Japan, October 1944. The empire is burning fuel and time. Saipan has fallen in June. American carriers prowl the Philippine Sea by autumn. In the Philippines, at Mabalacat's twin airfields east and west of the MacArthur Highway, a new idea takes form. Men will turn their aircraft into bombs. The Japanese name is Tokutai, Special Attack Units. The world will call them Kamikaze. Vice Admiral Takijiro Onishi arrives and on October 20th formally authorizes the first naval Toko force to resist the Leyte landings. The logic is brutal. If pilots and fuel are scarce, one crash must do the work of many sorties. The ritual is simple and heavy with symbols, white headbands stitched with hisho, certain victory. A final cup, often water in place of sake by 1944, lifted before commanders. Mechanics strip armor and guns to carry a single 250-kilogram bomb slung under a Zero's belly. The airfield priests bless wings with salt while crews whisper over checklists that presume no return. A roadside memorial near today's Clark, the old American base bordering Mabalacat, marks where the first Toko sorties rose into the sky. Among the chosen stands a young lieutenant the Navy trusts to lead the first effective strike. Yukio Seki of Ehime Prefecture, Naval Academy, Class 52. He has the clean record of an instructor and the calm of a formation leader. His name will become inseparable from the first successful kamikaze attack in history, the blow that sinks the escort carrier USS St. Lo on October 25, 1944, during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. 5 bomb-armed Zero fighters under Seki, escorted by aces including Hiroyoshi Nishizawa, dive on Taffy 3. St. Lo explodes and rolls under within minutes. But even here, within the ceremony and certainty, doubt lives. Seki is recorded as believing Japan's defeat is likely. He goes anyway. The Toko is born of strategic exhaustion, not miracle. Carriers shattered, oil cut, pilots rushed from classrooms to cockpits. The date on the order is precise, the desperation is plain. In the days between October 20th and 25, units form at Mabalacat East and West. Commanders read names aloud. Teenagers write farewell letters with hands that have barely learned to shoot straight. The aircraft themselves tell the truth. A Mitsubishi A6M0, often the A6M2 Model 21 in 1944's Philippines, later the A6M5 Model 52 in Home Island Defense, can carry that single 250-kilogram bomb fixed for ramming. Armor is minimal. Fuel is rationed to reach, not to return. The Zero's elegance is now a delivery system for a pilot's death. Dawn, October the 25th. Engines cough and rise to a hard whine. The first Toko mission commits to the sky. Seki's section finds Taffy. 3 explosions climb from blue water to white fire. On this day, the strategy works. An American warship goes down to a deliberate crash for the first time. The news will race through every ready room in the Philippines and then across Japan. From here, until war's end, thousands of naval and army pilots will die in similar attacks. Their graves are scattered from the Luzon plain to the seas off Okinawa. Yet not every man who lifted from Mabalacat, or later from Kyushu, Formosa, or Okinawa, finished his flight in fire. Weather closed in, engines fouled, formations scattered. Some pilots, ordered to die, circled in cloud and chose life. In memoirs and interviews, survivors describe the impossible choice: obey to the end or claim a sputter, a vibration, a cloud bank, and land with a story that saves a life and risks a firing squad. These decisions begin to multiply after Leyte. As raids intensify and training time shrinks, the machine demands bodies, conscience interrupts. Our story will follow one such pilot, the man who refused to die and then spent the rest of the war saving others. This is the tension that frames everything that follows, the ceremony that promises immortality, the empire that can no longer win, and the human being strapped behind the gun sight. The first Toko strike at Leyte shows the method. The months that follow expose the men. Some go straight into flame. A few turn home. The Empire calls both fate. What we will see is something else entirely, conscience, and the quiet revolt that begins the moment a pilot is told his duty is to die. In the months before the first Kamikaze attack, the machinery of ritual death spreads across the Empire. Flight schools, once meant to train naval aviators, now become factories for sacrifice. At Tsuchiura, Oita, and Chiran, cadets march between classes under banners reading 7 lives for the Emperor. Airframes arrive stripped of armament, engines repaired from wrecks, scavenged at Rabaul and Truk. Every workshop smells of burnt oil and incense. The process is efficient in its cruelty. Pilots selected for Toko service receive just enough flight time to take off, climb, and dive. Instruments are simplified, altimeters fixed, guns removed, the gun sight replaced by a small wooden crosspiece nailed to the canopy frame. Instructors tell them that skill no longer matters, only spirit. A strong heart hits truer than a steady hand, one commander says. At Leyte Air Group, surviving rosters show the average recruit is barely 20. Many are university students drafted under the 1943 Student Mobilization Order. Their letters home begin the same way. I have been chosen for a glorious duty, but the paper shakes under the brush. Some write that they are honored, others leave lines unfinished. Yukio Seki moves between these bases as a model officer. After the Marianas fall in July 1944, he is recalled from instructor duty to the Philippines. He lectures on formation tactics and the new dive profiles required for attack missions. Yet even in official briefings, his questions make superiors uneasy. Wouldn't 2 trained pilots alive tomorrow destroy more ships than 1 dead man today? He asks once. The room falls silent. Vice Admiral Onishi's aide notes it in his diary, but deletes the comment from the official minutes. Every evening the propaganda grows louder. Tokyo radio calls the Kamikaze the final flower of Yamato spirit. Newsreels show mothers sewing hachimaki headbands for sons they will never see again. The imperial rescript to soldiers, "Guard the nation even unto death," is read before every meal. Discipline blurs into devotion, devotion into submission. Seki watches his new squadron train at Mabalacat East. The airfield is a patchwork of coral and grass. Mechanics share tools with farmers who have joined the base labor unit. The Zeros they practice on are veterans of Guadalcanal, patched with tin and bamboo. He times each takeoff, notes how often the engines fail. He knows that half will never reach an enemy before gravity kills them first. At night, around kerosene lamps, the pilots practice writing farewell notes. They are told to include 1 sentence of gratitude to the Emperor and to leave space for their signatures, later displayed on shrine walls. Some quietly hide an extra letter inside, addressed to mothers or fiancés, forbidden personal words that will never be mailed. One evening, a 19-year-old named Masao Ito asks Seki what it feels like to die. Seki answers without irony, "I do not know. I am still alive." The boy laughs nervously, unsure whether it is a joke or a warning. The days before departure follow a fixed rhythm: morning calisthenics, mechanical drills, lectures on the divine mission. Then the ceremony of the 100 million heart. Civilians arrive from nearby towns carrying small paper flags. They bow as the pilots march past, each pilot touching a child's hand or a mother's sleeve as if already a ghost. Cameras record everything, the Empire's last parade before the fall. By mid-October, news from the north darkens the mood. Formosa's air battles have cost Japan hundreds of aircraft. The fleet at Linga Anchorage prepares to gamble everything at Leyte Gulf. Word spreads that the Kamikaze will be used in the operation. The pilots whisper about targets they cannot imagine, carriers bristling with guns, radar-guided interceptors that can find them through cloud. On the evening of October 24th, the order arrives. Yukio Seki will lead the first attack unit of the Shikishima Squadron. His name is written in black ink on the roster, pinned outside the operations hut. Beneath it, 10 younger pilots sign their own. None refuses. Refusal is unthinkable. The regulations prescribe death for insubordination, but shame is punishment enough. That night, the men gather for their final banquet. Food is scarce, rice mixed with millet, a single bottle of sake for all, but ceremony fills the emptiness. The base photographer lines them against the hangar wall. Seki stands in the center, smiling slightly, eyes half-shadowed under his cap. When the shutter clicks, a gust of wind lifts the flag behind them. In the print developed hours later, the red sun seems to halo his head. Before dawn, he walks the line of aircraft, checking bolts and fuel. Mechanics bow low. He thanks them, an unusual act for an officer, but says nothing more. The sky over Luzon glows pale orange, engines cough alive one by one. Seki glances east, toward the unseen sea, toward the American invasion force that has already breached Leyte Gulf. He tightens his harness, pulls the canopy down, and breathes the smell of aviation fuel and salt. Every man around him believes the mission will save Japan. Seki knows better. The Empire has no oil, no ships, no chance. Still he nods once to the control tower. The green flag drops. The Zeros roll forward, heavy with bombs, wings trembling. The ritual is complete. The men have been trained not to fight, but to vanish. The dawn over the Sibuyan Sea burns white. October 25th, 1944, the day of the Battle of Leyte Gulf. American escort carriers patrol east of Samar. The sky trembles with smoke from the carrier St. Lo and her sisters. On the Japanese side, the first Tokutai waves rise from the runways at Mabalacat. The air smells of wet grass and gasoline, and behind every propeller stands a mechanic wiping tears on his sleeve. Lieutenant Yukio Seki taxis to the head of the line. His A6M50, tail number 34315, carries a single 250-kilogram bomb bolted under the fuselage and enough fuel for one-way flight to the Leyte anchorage. Ground crew salute. The flag of the rising sun unfurls, limp in the heavy heat. Seki raises a gloved hand, then pushes the throttle open. The Zero lurches forward, wheels bouncing on the uneven strip, and climbs east into cloud. Inside the cockpit, the noise is absolute. Engine roar, vibration, the rattle of unsecured panels. Below, Luzon's rivers twist like quicksilver. Above, the morning haze blurs into the sea. Seki adjusts the trim, steadying the wobble that betrays a warped propeller. The mission's call sign crackles in his headset. Shikishima unit, maintain course 180, altitude 2,000 meters. 10 planes form a rough wedge behind him. The plan is simple, suicidal, and precise. At a signal from the escorting fighters, Seki's section will dive onto the nearest carrier, using sunlight to blind the gunners. Each Zero's bomb fuse is set for instant detonation on impact. It is not a dogfight, it is a ritual. But Seki sees what the maps never show. From 10,000 feet, the American fleet is a living machine. Smoke wakes, flashes of light from anti-aircraft guns already searching the sky. The first wave ahead has broken formation. Black bursts rise where they vanish. His radio fills with static and fragments of voices shouting, "Banzai, banzai!" before cutting off. He grips the control stick tighter. The horizon tilts. His heart beats against the parachute straps. In that instant, something shifts inside him, a thought as clear as the glint of tracer fire. This will change nothing. He remembers a night months earlier at Tsuchiura when he told his friend Lieutenant Mori, "If Japan asks me to die, I will. But if Japan asks me to die for nothing, I will think again." Mori had laughed, calling him a philosopher in uniform. Now the words return like prophecy. A sharp tremor shakes the Zero. The engine sputters once, choking on a bubble of bad fuel. To anyone watching, it looks like damage. Seki seizes the moment. He keys the radio. "Engine malfunction, City returning to base." No one answers. The sky is chaos. Commands drown under gunfire. He pulls the throttle back and banks west, away from the sun, away from the target. Behind him, 3 of his men continue the dive. He sees their silhouettes flash downward, each followed by a blossom of fire on the sea's surface. The St. Lo erupts moments later, a sheet of flame leaping higher than her mast. Through the smoke, Seki's altimeter spins, the numbers meaningless. He turns again, flying low under cloud cover, engine coughing, pretending damage severe enough to justify survival. For an hour he drifts west, skimming waves to avoid radar. The Philippine coastline appears, blue mountains fading through haze. He searches for a strip not yet cratered by American raids. Near Bacolod, he spots a field once used by training units. The runway is rough, but intact. He circles once, cuts the engine, and glides in. The landing gear snaps, the plane slides through mud and stops inches from a drainage ditch. Silence falls except for the ticking of cooling metal. Seki tears off his harness and climbs out. The wings are riddled with holes from spent shrapnel, the propeller bent. Local farmers run toward the wreck. He shouts for them to stay back. The bomb fuse may still be live. When soldiers from a nearby depot arrive, he gives his name and rank and says only, "Forced landing, engine failure." They nod, uncertain whether to salute or arrest him. That night he sits in the operations hut while an adjutant drafts a report. The form reads, "Mission aborted, technical malfunction, pilot recovered." No one dares to contradict it. The air group has already lost half its men. The command needs every plane that still moves. The officer stamps the document and mutters, "You are fortunate, Lieutenant. The gods have spared you." Seki bows, hiding the tremor in his hands. Outside, the horizon flickers red. News travels fast. A kamikaze has sunk an American carrier. Tokyo Radio will soon broadcast the triumph. At Mabalacat, the base photographer develops Seki's farewell portrait and pins it beside the others on the shrine wall. His comrades believe he died with them. He cannot sleep. In the small hours, he walks back to the wrecked Zero. The moon catches on the broken propeller, turning it silver. He thinks of the men still circling above Leyte, of the thousands who will follow, and of the lie that now shields him. He whispers to the night, "If dying is loyalty, then what is living?" By morning, orders arrive transferring him north for medical evaluation and reassignment. It is a quiet exile, no trial, no questions. The Navy buries his name under paperwork. His family will receive the official condolence later, along with a medal engraved for a death that never happened. For Seki, the war is far from over. He has crossed an invisible line, from hero to ghost, from celebrated martyr to living contradiction. The Empire will record him as gone, yet he still breathes. And now, the man who was meant to die begins to wonder how many others he might keep alive. By the winter of 1944, the Empire lives in silence and rumor. The official bulletins speak only of victory. The villages know otherwise. Letters arrive marked posthumous. Airfields fall one by one, Ormoc, Clark, Iwo Jima. Fuel is measured in teaspoons. The Navy that once ruled the Pacific now scavenges engines from wrecks and drains aircraft batteries to power radios. Lieutenant Yukio Seki returns quietly to Japan in December, carried by a transport convoy that zigzags through submarine shadows. His papers describe him as a pilot recovered from combat injuries. He keeps to himself, thin, sunburned, eyes permanently squinting from tropical glare. At Yokosuka, he is met not by honor guards but by a weary clerk who points him to temporary lodging at an auxiliary flight school. No one questions his survival. Headquarters is too busy counting losses to count ghosts. The new base sits at Chiran in southern Kyushu, a rural airfield soon to become the final gateway for hundreds of teenage kamikaze pilots bound for Okinawa. Its barracks are wooden, its runways short, its cherry trees trimmed to stumps by propeller wash. By February 1945, American B-29s from Saipan are firebombing Tokyo every week. Still, the Empire orders more Toko units to prepare. Posters in every mess hall read, "One plane, one ship." Officers quote Admiral Onishi's promise that 1,000 noble deaths will force America to negotiate. Seki walks the line of zero fighters and feels the weight of the lie pressing on his lungs. Each plane before him is painted fresh but assembled from scrap, a wing from Taiwan, a fuselage from Sasebo, control cables patched with telephone wire. Every pilot is barely trained. Students from Kyoto, Osaka, even junior high cadets barely 16. Their eyes gleam with the certainty that they will save Japan. Seki cannot look at them without remembering the fireballs over the Sibuyan Sea. Officially, he is a flight instructor. Unofficially, he becomes something else. He begins to teach his students how to return with honor, the phrase whispered in barracks but never written. He shows them how to read the engine's breathing, to recognize the sputter that can be called a malfunction. He sketches alternate flight paths that skirt radar and lead back to hidden airstrips. He tells them to memorize one line, engine trouble, returning to base. If spoken with confidence, it can save a life. The first boy to test his advice is a cadet named Haruo Yamada. On April 4, 1945, his squadron launches toward the Allied fleet off Okinawa. Yamada circles in cloud, claims carburetor failure, and lands shaking. 2 days later, Seki finds him sweeping the hangar floor, still alive. The base commander calls the incident mechanical fortune. Seki says nothing. As raids intensify, he expands his quiet rebellion. He files false weather reports to postpone sorties. He declares several planes unfit for flight and personally removes their magnetos. He orders maintenance teams to overfill fuel tanks so that vapor lock stall engines after takeoff. To the staff officers in Tokyo, Chiran's efficiency simply appears low. The reports list mechanical attrition. No one suspects sabotage because the results look like exhaustion. By May, Okinawa has become a slaughter. Kamikaze waves from Kyushu crash daily into the grey fleets offshore. Only 1 in 10 reaches a target. Onishi's estimate of 1,000 American losses for 1,000 Japanese deaths collapses under arithmetic. Still, orders continue. Seki keeps erasing names from the mission lists by whatever pretext he can invent. Fever, fuel shortage, missing parts. He cannot save all, but each delay means one more boy breathes through another dawn. Rumors begin to follow him. Some mechanics call him the ghost pilot, believing he died at Leyte and now walks among them as a spirit to guard the young. Others whisper that he is cursed, that anyone he trains will be marked for failure. He accepts the superstition. It protects him better than secrecy. One evening, as the sun sets behind the Kirishima Mountains, Seki watches a final group of volunteers march toward their planes. Each carries a white scarf, fluttering like a soul already detached. He feels the familiar ache, pride, pity, rage, all folded into silence. He thinks of Admiral Onishi, now commanding the entire Toko effort from a wooden office in Tokyo, still believing that mass sacrifice will redeem defeat. Seki knows the truth. The empire is collapsing not from lack of courage, but from lack of truth. When the Emperor's broadcast finally comes on August 15, 1945, the airfield's loudspeakers hiss with static. Hirohito's voice, distant, trembling, announces Japan's surrender. The phrase "endure the unendurable" ripples through the crowd. Some officers draw their swords and weep, others stare blankly at the ground. Seki stands among the cadets he has kept alive and feels an emotion he cannot name. Relief tastes like shame. Survival feels like betrayal. That night, in the barracks, he burns the flight rosters. The lists of those he delayed, the false reports, the maintenance logs that would expose his defiance. The ashes drift across the runway like snow. The boys who remain alive will go home and tell no one that a senior officer once taught them to fail. Seki walks to the end of the airstrip and looks at the dark sea. The sky over Kyushu still flickers from distant fires, but for the first time in years, there are no engines in it. He has lived by breaking the code that defined his nation, and by doing so he has saved its sons. In the Empire's records, he is already dead. In truth, he is only beginning to live. The war ends, but peace does not begin. Japan lies in ruins, cities hollowed by firebombs, rail lines twisted, the smell of ashes drifting through every prefecture. Survivors move like ghosts, faces wrapped in cloth against the dust. In the official records, Lieutenant Yukio Seki is among the dead, killed in action, Leyte Gulf, October 25, 1944. His family receives the telegram with the Emperor's condolences and a small box of sand said to be from the place of honor. No one tells them that he breathes still somewhere in the south, walking under an assumed name among the ruins of airfields that no longer matter. In late 1945, Seki surrenders himself to the new Allied occupation authorities. He removes the insignia from his uniform and signs the declaration of demobilization with a civilian name, Y. Saito. The officer processing him barely looks up. There are hundreds every day. Seki leaves with a ration card and a single question no one can answer. What is a soldier meant to do when dying is no longer required? He travels north by train through bombed-out cities, Hiroshima's skeleton dome still smoking, Osaka reduced to black sand. At each stop he sees the same faces, widows clutching photographs of sons who flew from Kyushu and never returned. They call them heroes. At night, in the cheap inns along the railway, Seki hears them whisper the names of the dead like prayers. He says nothing. He finds work at a small machine shop in Nagoya repairing engines for fishing boats. The sound of the pistons reminds him of flight, but the smell of oil and sea brings back the roar of Zeros falling into the ocean. He keeps to himself, a quiet man with good hands and no past. To his co-workers, he is simply Saito-san, the one who never drinks, never joins in the veterans' stories. Years pass. Japan rebuilds. Steel towers rise where the bomb craters were. Radios play American jazz. Children run where runways once lay. The nation learns to forget. The word Toko disappears from newspapers, replaced by Heiwa, peace. But at the Chiran Peace Museum, visitors still file past photographs of the Kamikaze. Among them is Seki's own portrait, the smiling face taken before his final flight, haloed by a flag. Underneath, the caption reads, Lieutenant Yukio Seki, leader of the 1st Special Attack Unit, martyred in the Battle of Leyte Gulf. He stands before it one evening in 1955, unrecognized. His reflection overlaps his younger self. He feels neither pride nor shame, only the strangeness of seeing his life displayed as someone else's death. Before leaving, he meets the museum's caretaker, an old naval mechanic who squints at him and says, "You remind me of a pilot I once knew, dead long ago." Seki bows and replies softly, "Then may he rest in peace." He never speaks publicly of what he did at Chiran. But among former trainees, stories surface of a senior officer who sabotaged engines, of flights that never happened, of a man called the Ghost Pilot. Historians dismiss them as rumor. Japan prefers its martyrs to its doubters. Yet when post-war researchers interview surviving cadets in the 1970s, several remember the same instruction whispered before takeoff. If you hear the engine cough, turn back. Say it is the will of the gods. Seki lives long enough to see the memorials bloom with cherry trees. He visits the airfield each spring, blending into the crowds who bow before the names carved in stone. No one knows that one of those names belongs to him. Children fold paper cranes and place them at the base of the monument. He leaves a single white blossom and walks away before anyone can ask his name. In his final years, he writes fragments of a journal that he never publishes. In one passage, he records the question that haunted him since that morning above the Sibuyan Sea. If dying was duty, what was living? He answers in a single line beneath it. To live was to refuse the lie. When he dies quietly in the 1960s, some accounts say in Ehime, others near Kagoshima, no obituary appears. The government never corrects the record. The shrine at Yasukuni still honors him as fallen in battle. But among the few who knew the truth, his story endures not as a tale of defiance, but of conscience. For all the talk of honor and death, it was the act of living that required the greater courage.